Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm just doing a video because I like to talk about controversial subjects here, and people know that, and especially about this type of rock star groupie dynamic that's played itself out at least up until a certain point in history. I'm kind of fascinated. Okay, I will admit I'm fascinated by that period, like the 70s, 80s, 60s. So I do talk about that a lot, and I do explore these subjects, including the controversial ones regarding that. So now the question is, would I be partaking in that culture if I lived back then? I mean, it's impossible to say what I would do, like given my consciousness, if I like quantum leaped into a rock star in the mid 70s or something. I'll tell you one thing I wouldn't be doing is drugs. I'm not into drugs. So what would I be doing? Some of the other stuff? Well, I don't know. I don't know. I'd be doing some of it. I'll just say that. So the controversy comes in where Steven Tyler has been accused of all these things with this one woman that I think he kind of took her in. She was like underage, and then they were together like 2.5 years, and then something happened, and she's kind of coming forward 50 years later, plus 50 plus years later, and trying to collect money from him or some sort of lawsuit settlement kind of thing. I'm just like, okay, well. Now, I have a split opinion about this because let's just put it this way. If you have done any reading on rock and roll and the history of rock music, like I have over the years, if there was no statute of limitations, the entire rock and roll, I'm serious. Like I am serious. Like every rock band from like 1962. Well, let's go back to Jerry Lee Lewis. Of course, there's some kind. I don't support that or endorse what he did. By the way, as a note, let's go back to like the 50s or even Elvis. With Priscilla Presley. Go back all the way, maybe until like the PC Manginas and Pearl Jam. Okay, maybe they. Who knows? They probably have skeletons too because they're so fucking self-righteous. But anyways. Let's go, go all the way. Maybe, some of the hardcore punk, vegan, whatever, hardcore guys, or, like Minor Threat, or Henry Rollins got accused of something too in the 80s. He talks about it in some of his spoken word. Anyways, let's go back all the way. The entire medium of rock, almost every band would have at least one or two members in prison. That's straight up. If you look at it, I mean, it would probably be heavier in the 70s and the 80s, but that's what would happen if there was no statute of limitations. Women would be able to claim they were underage or whatever. Now, I've watched there's a lot of interviews with like 70s and 80s groupies from back then, and they're really revealing and really interesting. And you're like, the problem that I have is this. Okay, so I was going to get to my split opinion about this. Let's go to that first. I'm sorry. So, that said, there haven't been a lot of these accusations from these women back then. Even like the infamous groupie of Led Zeppelin, Lori Maddox, hasn't come forward and said she felt forced to do what Jimmy Page wanted to do and stuff. Even though it's like kind of documented that's kind of what the dynamic was like, strangely enough. It's very strange and very troubling to think about. So, what do I think about this Steven Tyler? Well, I am of two minds. I think it's possible that she is telling the truth and she did feel forced to do all this stuff. And that's why, and I had a similar thing with Styx Hexenhammer. It's like, if it's already like, if you're already the type of person that wouldn't necessarily accuse, like, there haven't been like this people bouncing with like the Me Too stuff. There's been like it's all these actors and producers and all this stuff, and even some directors and stuff. But with the music thing with Me Too, there's a couple things. Obviously, there's some big things like R. Kelly or Puff Daddy. Let's call him that because I hate that guy. I've hated him since the 90s. R. Kelly had some bangers though. That's the sad part. So. The thing is, with regards to these guys, there haven't been like this huge rock Me Too thing. Like, I don't know if that's going to. And this thing's a couple years old and it hasn't really opened the floodgates. You know, there are people, Anthony Kiedis is dating a 19-year-old. Oh my God, call the press. You know, or whatever. You know, Billy Joel had some younger, you know, wives and stuff. Like one was like 20 and he was like 56 or some shit. You know, and I don't necessarily. That's not my like desire. People might think that from me, but if I see a hot chick and she's of age, though, like I'm not going to say no to it. I'm just saying. It's not something I'm gonna seek out, you know, necessarily, but you know, just cast a wide net. So, nevertheless, I know people, you know, have misinterpreted what I said, especially like some family members and stuff about what I've said about this. No, I didn't say that. I've been kind of doing some self-exploration lately about a lot of this stuff too, by the way. So, I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna go into that in this video, but anyways, so this whole thing. It's like with Six Hexenhammer, like, oh, the right wing girl that he was dating, you know, she's probably right wing like he was. She wouldn't necessarily. I'm not saying necessary. I'm just saying necessarily. They're not the ones that have green hair or 300 pounds and have a septum piercing. If you look at them funny, they'll accuse you of the R word, right? No, it's not like that. It's probably more credible since. They are kind of anti-woke, anti-feminist. Not necessarily, but mind you. So with the groupie thing, it's like, well, there's so many groupies that were underage or otherwise. And you haven't had a flood of people doing it. So that kind of makes it, you know, by default, like a little bit more credible in a way with the Steven Tyler thing. And I'm not saying it is or isn't, but, you know, he was a wild guy. You know, back then, things were pretty crazy, you know. A lot of drugs, a lot of sex and everything. So who knows? Maybe this thing happened, but nevertheless, it's like are we? If we open that door, it's almost like the Epstein files. It's like the Epstein files is worse because to me the Epstein thing's worse because of the hypocrisy involved in it. The moral grandstanding of these people. You have fucking Noam Chomsky writing allegedly writing a birthday message to him, and like. The guy has like talked about Israel half his life. This guy was apparently was a Mossad guy, the Epstein. It's like, why would you? That's hypocrisy right there. But not to mention the sexual hypocrisy that's alleged to have happened. These rock stars were just like, fuck yeah, let's get laid. You know, I mean, there's no hypocrisy there. If they're saying what they want to do, they wrote songs about it. You know, jailbait. I just can't wait. You know, with Motorhead or Ted Nugent or whatever. I mean, he had a lot of art. I mean, there's worse lyrics by Ted Nugent. I'm not going to try to push the boundaries here and talk about it. But, you know, they were open about it. They were just like, yeah, we're perverts. We're fucked up. You know, we're high or whatever. Not Ted Nugent, allegedly. So, you know, they weren't hypocrites about it. So it's kind of like, it's way less morally. It's in this moral area that's way to me it's almost an irony because it's like, to me it's almost less problematic than the Epstein in that way. And of course, on the spectrum of consent, just saying, those girls or women or whatever are closer to the actual consent than the Epstein girls, more than likely. You know, you have fucking Ted Bundy on this end, and you have, ma'am, may I kiss you? Right at the other end, the cuck soy boy, right? You have those two extremes. And, you know, right here is Epstein, right here is those groupies, right? It's a consent graph or whatever. So people say, oh, you can't consent if you're under 18. Well, what if you're 17 years and like, or a prefrontal cortex? What if your prefrontal cortex is, I mean, are you going to ban 25-year-olds from having sex? Or, you know, is Ashton Kutcher all of a sudden, you know, a victim from Demi Moore? He was under 25. He was under 30. It's 30 is the man and 25 is the woman. So, so a 28-year-old can't have sex with a 25-year-old. Are we going to go that route? Are we going to go that crazy? See, this is why I talk about this stuff, because it's so fucking stupid. I'm just fascinated by people's opinions about this. And honestly, I just think it's crazy. Some of this stuff is just insane. So, anyways, I'm on a whole different tangent here. But then the Steven Tyler thing, I don't know. I'm agnostic about it. I don't know. I think if a woman is that committed to that. See, I'm kind of, in a way, I'm more woke than I was, because I'm like, because the pendulum swings a lot. So to me, if a groupie, out of all these not million, tens of thousands of groupies, is accusing one guy of something, there might be a little bit more smoke there, because there's, obviously they did all this shit back in the day. It's like, if they don't have regrets, then there's consent on that graph I gave, right? There's more consent. I'm sorry to say there's a little bit of consent with someone that's 17 and someone's 26. I'm sorry. I'll worship your vagina, your sacred vagina, your feminine goddess of purity. So anyways, that's pretty much all I got to say about that. That's about all.